everyone. Welcome to the latest edition of MSP Business School. And you might notice something a little bit different today. I'm flying solo. Tim and Rob had a couple conflicts and we had a tough time working out schedule today. So I told them I'd be happy to captain the ship and make sure that we provide you some information as we always work to do each week. And today, what I wanted to share with you is a little bit about what I do as I head into a new year. And I'm sure many of you are like me in this, as you go into that Christmas week or holiday week before the new year starts, you start thinking about your business. Obviously, you've probably done your strategic planning, but now it's a little bit about educating yourself even more on what's going out in the marketplace and how can you better communicate with your customers. And I'm always looking for different trends or different things that are, people are seeing out in the marketplace that might become part of my conversation when I'm talking with my customers. So, when I do that, I look at it from the perspective of course, learning educationally what's on the mind of the MSP and the MSP vendors like myself. Out in the marketplace today, there's a number of different vendors and they're sharing information. And it's very much things that MSPs need to consider, but a lot of it is about the MSP themselves and the services they provide. And when we're talking about the solutions we're providing to the customer, we're not always looking at things from the lens of the customer. So what I spent some time doing during break was really looking at different CIOs in different market spaces and trying to understand what their biggest concerns are going into 2023, what the initiatives are that they're going to be really focused on as they go into the new year, and then look at how to translate those potentially into the MSP space. So, with that being said, I want to share some different quotes that I collected during the week and give you kind of my perspective on what that really might mean to the MSP. So I'm going to start with here a quick quote from Jeff Sippel over at Northwestern Mutual. And he's basically his quote was, "Persistent economic uncertainty will push technology into a defensive posture." And I think we all understand that. These are uncertain economic times. If you don't believe so, if you're in the Northeast like I am or out in the Midwest, take a look at your home heating oil bill and tell me that things aren't a little bit uncertain and look a little differently than they did last winter. Same with groceries. I was blown away as I got sent out for some eggs this week and saw, probably the last time I had to buy eggs, they were like $2 a dozen last year. And I went and bought a dozen for $7. It was eye-opening on really how inflation really has hit the marketplace. I've definitely felt it taking the family out to dinner. You can look at that being a third more, but I don't do the grocery shopping necessarily, so that blew my mind when I saw the price of eggs. But you think about anything that we really touch out in the marketplace today, it's costing a little bit more because as fuel costs rise, of course, do the same with the transport costs, and that trickles down to the consumer. Well, it's no different, obviously, when we start talking about the enterprise space or our small to mid-sized customers as they start looking at their business. Now, when they're looking at technology and making their decisions, they're going to do it with a, hey, do I have to do this kind of mindset going into this year? But the good news is they're still out there looking at making transformational changes within their organization, but there has to be more teeth in that project. So if you're looking at transformational projects with your customers, things that are going to bring them forward into, a more modernized technology infrastructure and help with those security concerns that we as MSPs talk about quite a bit, we need to take into consideration also, how are we going to demonstrate efficiencies within these projects that we're pitching to our customers? How can we show them that they can do more with less, to borrow from Microsoft's Windows 2003 campaign years ago? But really, make sure that they can see that by doing this transformational project, not only are they going to make gains within their infrastructure, but they are also going to, at the same time, be able to start driving costs down, improve workflow, increase productivity with their customers, get better data analytics out of the systems they're using. There's 100 different ways that you can extract value, and we have to make sure that when we're positioning these projects with our customer, we're communicating what those values are. And those service providers that can show a skill at doing this and really help their customers understand how transformational projects are going to drive efficiencies back to their business, so those end users that have to then pitch it to the board can do so confidently, those are the ones that are going to be win coming into this current year. The next quote I saw that I really liked as I was doing my research over the holidays came from Guido Sacchi, CIO and EVP over at Global Payments. And he said, in 2023, companies will take stock of their progress transitioning to the cloud and assess how to extract value from their investments. So what does that really mean to me? Hey, the beauty, COVID was a horrible time for all of us, but I think as service providers, the one thing that we can say became a benefit is customers finished out some of those long-standing cloud migration projects. Now, the fact is they did that kind of with a little pressure, if you will, in terms of making sure that they could gear up for the remote workforce and also make sure that they couldn't go down if their team couldn't return to the offices and manage those hardware assets that might have been there. So, while COVID was great at accelerating cloud adoption, now customers, as we enter into the post-COVID era, are really looking at those investments they made and saying, are we extracting the full value of what we did? So what we need to do as service providers is really help them understand how to maximize those investments. And one of the things I always think about when I talk about cloud investments is, most service providers are providing some sort of productivity suite, whether it be the Google Suite, Google Workspace, or Microsoft 365. I'm going to use Microsoft 365 as the example right now. But users of Microsoft 365 are absolutely only scratching the surface in most cases on what that product can do, right? We are out there and, we've implemented Exchange, maybe Teams with our customers, maybe a little bit of SharePoint, but we certainly haven't touched many of the other ancillary products that come downstream from there. We haven't shown integration between some of these tools into Teams for our customers so they can maximize how they communicate externally as well. We have potentially not worked on upgrading our secure scores and making sure that we're maximizing security within the application. There's a whole host of opportunity that comes out of that productivity suite that we can bring back to their customer and show them at a relatively low cost, usually just our service dollars, that they can enhance and expand their services. So we really need to look at all cloud applications like that and do that. Now, what are some other ways that you can do that? Think about some of the marketing softwares that your companies use. Those marketing softwares are enriched with automation opportunity. They're enriched with data intelligence that we can get to. And those are the kind of things that we can guide our customers to looking at. And if we leverage that data and export it out and maybe bring it into business, Microsoft's Power BI or something like that, we can really help them leverage that data to adapt quicker to their marketplace, maybe target prospects more effectively and drive more effective marketing promotions, because you're going to be able to pull all that information into a data lake and potentially share it with their customers. So, one thing that's been proven time and time again is what global, CIOs are thinking about trickles down very quickly to the small to mid-sized space. And usually adoption of these initiatives happen faster in the small to mid-sized space than they actually can happen within the enterprise. So, I love to listen to what these senior CIOs are talking about out in the marketplace, because these things do translate down to what our market will be looking for very soon. So, if you're looking at really how to gain some traction with your customer, or at least engage in different conversations and keep that stickiness in the relationship with your clients, think about cloud maximization as a conversation point to take on with them. There. The next one's around AI. So AI will become table stakes for how organizations and IT departments run their business, says Stephen Franchetti, the CIO of Samsara. Well, table stakes might be a bit of a leap at this stage, but I think all of us know that every company is looking at how they can leverage AI a little bit more. And certainly all of us have now encountered AI within our own lives. If you've ever, reached out to support and gotten back quick answers through a chatbot, you're seeing the first tier of, how AI can be utilized in the marketplace. It reads those answers and has a playbook to kind of walk you through it. Similarly, AI is coming into a lot of the security tools we provide to our customers, where they're looking at anomalies, looking at things that are coming in as data, looking at those data points, and it's self-correcting how they improve the protection capabilities of their systems. So AI is becoming prevalent in a lot of points in our life, and we've got to look at our customer and have a conversation and say, how are you guys entertaining the use of AI? Even if we don't anticipate potentially being the guys that deliver on AI resources in the future, we have to become more versed. So as when we're sitting in that virtual CIO seat or that virtual CISO seat, we can support those initiatives that the customer is thinking about as it relates to artificial intelligence. One of the challenges out in the marketplace, though, is a lot of AI projects fail to deliver on the promises being made. So another place where the MSP can really play a role in this, in supporting their clients, is being there when they're making AI selections and keeping the vendors honest, helping them, your end users, add the question or answer the questions that they might not know how to answer themselves. And those that become more comfortable with AI and are comfortable interacting with AI from a service provider perspective are going to be the ones that win in the future. So, I know a number of MSPs that are starting to dedicate a resource to really become the subject matter expert on AI. Again, even if they're not looking at delivering those technologies themselves, but to help support those conversations and help support the customer through the decision-making process. The next one is another top challenge for 2023 for CIOs will be combating inflationary pressures that increase technology costs, which grow alongside the business needs. So you heard me speak a little bit earlier about, about the egg conundrum and the gas conundrum, but let's think about something else that often comes up in our own personal lives. I don't know how many of you were like me and cut the cord recently. But one of the things that I know is when I cut the cord, from my household, it was with the initial anticipation of saving money. Very quickly, I don't think I've saved money, but I have changed how we consume things. If I really look at it, there are definitely things within my, my bag of tricks that we may not need to use. And as we look at inflationary challenges, we got to think about those products and services that we're not using and make sure that we are, approaching things appropriately to reduce our costs and keep in line with what we actually require. So from a CIO perspective, things that they're going to be looking at very heavily in 2023 are things like labor costs and software subscriptions. I think we'd all say that labor costs, especially in a competitive marketplace like IT talent, may be exceeding the inflation that we're seeing today. And with that happening, it's going to be much, much more difficult to hire the talent that we wanted to in the past, or hire talent at top dollar, depending on how your organization sits. So we've got to look at ways to offset those rising labor costs for our customers. And of course, that's a huge opportunity in the MSP space where, if you look historically at years past, outsourcing during times of inflation drives MSP growth. My original service provider business started in 2001 as a result of me being a .com casualty when that blew up. So that obviously led for me being a new entrant in the service provider space. Very quickly, we adopted managed services in 2002 and started proactive monitoring and building from there. When I fast forward to 2008, when the housing crisis hit, again, people were getting laid off, and this really increased the opportunity for more outsourcing to occur, and our MSP grew during that period. So we're heading into it, kind of a contradictory period to the rest of the marketplace. And we kind of saw that during COVID as well, right? Where now we have an opportunity to potentially provide outsourcing to organizations that are a tier higher than we've supported before, but are going through layoffs and might have areas of their business that they want to bring under a managed service or outsource subscription. Subscription costs are going to be something else that's going to be scrutinized as well. Now, software subscription costs, we'll get into a little bit deeper in just a moment, but think about service costs too. A lot of us have legacy contracts that we sign that we're quite comfortable with, and we know that we're winning very heavily on those contracts today. While I'm not suggesting we go out there and give our customers any kind of price breaks on day one, we might want to consider those areas where we do have to have the potential to adjust, or at least know what we're willing to give up in advance. Because one of the other threats that comes out of uncertain inflationary times like this, where layoffs are prevalent, is new entrants to the MSP market space. As many of you know, right now, this is an unlegislated or unregulated area of business in most states. It doesn't take much to be an MSP except a desire and a URL in many cases. So you're going to see a lot of employees that get laid off go out and start service provider businesses. And why this is a threat to the established MSP is we know who our competitors are today. We have a sense of what they charge. We're probably in line with what they charge, so the market stays in a specific place. But when inflation comes in and people are forced to start these companies up, they're hungry, man. They are out there thinking about how they're going to feed their families, how they're going to continue to pay their mortgages, and they're willing to work for food, so to speak. And while that, if they're successful at it, they're certainly going to grow and evolve into the same models that we all share in the MSP space. A lot of these can be a threat to us. And don't think that they won't come into some of your accounts. It's usually a friend of a friend of a friend who got laid off conversation that brings them in. I just spoke about 2 down cycles that I lived through, and I can tell you in both those cycles, we lost customers we never thought we were going to lose because of new entrants coming in at a much lower price point. So we want to make sure that when we're looking at inflation, that we're really staying on top of this as well. And then the final initiative that I really enjoyed, or didn't enjoy reading about necessarily, but really took heed in was CIO's number one priority in 2023 will be to cut out bloatware. For my vendor partners out there, make sure you're looking at your adoption numbers and make sure you're looking at ways to keep your customers engaged. And that quote came from Prasad Ramakrishnan at Freshworks, which is a tool that we utilize very heavily at VCIO Toolbox. It makes sense, right? Again, we've talked about inflationary pressure and uncertain times. At those times, you're going to look to cut the bills. I talked about cutting the cord, and one of the things I look at are what services we're not utilizing today, because all those services went from being probably $7-8 when I started to more around $15 now. And we probably have all of them. At my house, it's a very entertainment-rich household right now. But as a result of that, I could be spending thousands that I'm unknowing about because it's about the price of a couple cups of coffee and you don't think about it. Well, of course, that's not going to be the case in business where it's just the price of a cup of coffee. But they are, your end users are going to be looking at the softwares and services they subscribe to and seeing if there's really value that they need there. They're going to review that as part of their budgetary process this year, and that could be concerning to some of the vendor friends out there. For those serving the end users, obviously you want to make sure that your tools are in line, you MSPs, that you've got the right tools so you can give the right price to your customer. We talked a little bit earlier about legacy applications potentially going away at the sacrifice of value for cost. Do you have any tools where there's competitors that are very similar and have the core necessities you need that might allow you to go to a cheaper vendor to reduce your cost to the customer? Those are things that you're really going to want to look at. And then, your customers are going to look at older applications and say, do I want to continue to support these? And that can impact your contracts as well. So, as you're working with your customers, if you're playing in that VCIO arena, I suggest sitting down with them and having that conversation of, hey, how are you looking at your budget coming up this year? Are you thinking about making cuts across the board? Are those cuts going to be focused on human capital? Or are you looking at IT initiatives? It might sound counterproductive, Mr. Customer, but maybe I can help guide you to where we can make some savings on the IT side. And now you're taking control of what potentially is going to leave the customer. So those are 5 things that you need to consider, as you head into the new year, from the mouths of CIOs that are experiencing this within their business, and certainly talking to the business leaders within the organization about things that go beyond technology as well. If you want to be a winner in 2023, I want you to think of this. When you're facing a conversation about economic uncertainty, the providers that can balance the conversation about why transformation is important and how those transformational journeys are going to provide you with a more efficient, workflow or better productivity or better ROI, you're going to win. For those that are facing a cloud investment maximization conversation with your customer, demonstrate use cases and better outcomes from existing investments. Lean back on my Microsoft story and say, are there things that you can bring to the table there that aren't going to be high cost that the customer can leverage more out of that tool? And then think about that across their entire landscape of applications. Harnessing AI. If that's a question that's starting to come up, MSPs that are integrating AI into their own businesses are learning more about it every day. And by learning more about it, they're going to be able to spread those different solutions and help guide their customers to the right choices around AI and really bring that extra value in that manner. So, take heed there. If your conversation's about hedging inflation, that's when you really have to help your customers understand the value of outsourcing. We are MSPs. What we sell in the marketplace is a team-based approach to solving IT problems. We have the skills on the bench that a smaller MSP cannot afford. And you're doing it at a price that might be equal or less than the cost of a dedicated resource. Have that depth of bench conversation, have the skill set conversation, and have the fluidity conversation, and make sure they see the value in doing that. And certainly with customers that are losing IT staff, make sure that they understand how they're going to not lose mind share that they had before by engaging you as the MSP. And then finally, if the conversation is about removing bloatware, just stay on guard. Listen to those conversations, understand the actions your customer wants to take. If it's really going to become something that happens, become a participant in that conversation if they will allow you, and really help guide them to the projects that they need to remove. So I want to thank you all for joining me today. Rob and Tim will be back with me next week. Of course, if you are listening, you can get this recording from anywhere you get your podcast today, including YouTube. So if you're up visiting our YouTube, please subscribe, smash that bell, do all those kind of things, because we'd love to make sure that you stay informed with when our podcasts are coming up. As we move deeper into 2023, we're really excited. We've got a host of guests already lined up and committed coming into the year. So we're going to get back to really sharing the stories of other MSPs and vendors in the community and making sure they're bringing information that you need so you can excel. If you've got any questions for myself, Tim, or Rob, please hit us at our email addresses are up on social. We'll put those into the notes today. And I want to welcome you all into 2023 and look forward to another great year doing podcasts with you. Take care.